Welcome to Black and Blue, the podcast that's just for you. We bring solutions to everyday problems. We are here to humanize the badge. By interviewing first responders and discussing their trainings, experiences, and publications. Black and Blue airs weekly at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tune in.
Thought, well, if I go to transit, I don't have to deal with that anymore. The pay is phenomenal.
Okay.
Perks were phenomenal. They even gave out bonuses when ridership went up. I thought, win-win. And they have a foot patrol in San Francisco, so I'll work off some of the pounds. This is what I had in my head. You know, cops, we could talk ourselves into just about anything.
You can find the bright side, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. So the last 6 years of my career, I went to Bay Area Rapid Transit, which covers now it's about 6 counties, 50 cities. Okay. It stretches from San Francisco across the Bay to the East Bay. It was a different experience that I was not used to. We had 8,000 homeless crammed into 49 square miles. Most have addiction and mental health issues. And you're in a crowded platform with literally thousands of people because one train, full crush load train, can open the doors and there comes 1,000 people right out the doors. And you have something breaking bad, a fight, stabbing, a domestic, people shooting up dope, and you have to make your way through those crowds. So it was a learning curve, and that's how I eventually got into what I wrote about. Was I started digging down into the homeless issue.
Right.
I approached it, cops, we hate the touchy-feely stuff, and they talk about replacing us with social workers. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to be the best little social worker they've ever seen. I'm going to take they trained me to be an investigator. I'm going to be an investigator. I'm going to go out. I'm going to be a detective, and I'm going to figure out why are these people homeless? Why are they shooting up dope in the middle of platforms on stairs? Why are they doing what they're doing? Let's get to the root of this and let's solve this case. And that was the rabbit hole that I fell into for about 5 years, and came out of it with a little more trauma to add to all the other stuff.
Right.
That's basically it in a nutshell. Now all of a sudden they're a heroin addict and smoking meth on top of it, and they're beating up their parents. Yeah. I tried to understand what is that duality? Is that like what they call a split personality? And then I noticed this is something that came out of the complex PTSD. Cops who work patrol can appreciate this, is you feel dead inside. You get like an emotional numbness. You can walk up to a scene and sometimes you'll see the most horrendous things. And if you were watching a movie, you might have a reaction to it. But when you're in uniform, it's like a armor, and you just don't feel anything. And I remember thinking, man, is this normal that I'm just looking at dead kids and all this other stuff going on? And I once had a 10-year-old who hung himself in a closet.
Wow.
And I'm not feeling anything. Wow. It was just a mild curiosity back then, but I realize now it's part of the complex PTSD, and that feeds into that duality. Well, a lot of these kids, these homeless kids, and the addicts also have PTSD, usually complex. There was 2 kids, 2 young late teens, early 20s, shooting heroin, needles out, everything, right in front of all the kids walking around them and past them. And I was just seeing red. My mouth went New York on them. I was pissed. And I was telling them, what the fuck are you doing? In front of little children, how could you do that? These kids are seeing it, dropping your dirty needles. And he ran out. There's 2 of them. One came back down the stairs to me. And I was like, what do you want now? Yeah. And he looked at me and he was crying. And he said, I wasn't always a piece of shit. And he walked off. And that, even to this day, it keeps ringing in my head.
Yeah.
And that duality of that, it touched on my empathy enough that curiosity built.
Mm-hmm.
And I started studying these kids in a sense. What is your story? I did a full interview with every homeless kid I worked with. What is your life story? What set of circumstances did you live that led you to now being on the street at 19 years old, smoking meth, smoking fentanyl, doing whatever drugs comes your way? How did it get like this? And you start to see these patterns and you see this duality. And when I noticed that when they were high and out of control, or their mental health issues, their mental illness had a strong grip on them, and they were, we'd get the calls of the 5150 is what they call it in California. That's mental health crisis. And you take them involuntary treatment. We would get a lot of 5150 calls, all shift long. And you would see the same person you were talking to a week before, and now they're just like a raging animal. In the book, I talk about Joseph, one of them, who was born to a drug addict mother, and I think the father did drugs too. He never had a chance. And he told me, man, Hoff, be careful around me, because when I'm off my meds, I will eat the paint off the walls.
Yeah.
Telling me that he was dangerous and literally warning me, when you see my hide,
the other side,
use officer safety. And that just amazed me that, wow, that this guy's telling me that to be careful. This is the guy who's warning me about him. And it started snowballing from that. I started looking into more and more of the critical type of mental health subjects that we dealt with, and what their story was, and what their illnesses were, and what the medications did. And because of that, I had some good success cases. I was able to get a young girl back to Japan after 5 years on the streets. The Japanese consulate sent us cookies. She attacked the parents, beat the parents up, but I had to fight the system to get her and a young kid from Texas, 5 years, schizophrenic, never had a diagnosis. That's all he needed, was a diagnosis so he could get those meds, because he was in that revolving door of come in, get corked out. Doctor said, he's fine to release, send him back out. The mother came up and pleaded with us to help us find her son and bring him back home. We got him back home, got him medicated and back home. And this kid used to fight the police. He was hostile. Every time you even try to talk to him, the fuck you talking to me for? Get the fuck away from me. Just nasty. When he was on meds, smiling, sweet, shook my hand, thanked me. He was hugging his sisters for seeing them. It was a completely different human being.
Yeah.
And that kind of dug into me and said, man, if these guys are like this, how many of these others that I look down on or get cranky with have the same story? Some family that loves them, or when medicated and healthy, are a completely different human being.